Alright, and we are live again. I don't bloody know. I just felt like letting my pipes go. Anyways, whatever. Hello everybody, you know me. Okay, no you don't, but you know who I am. I'm Issa J, and right alongside me, as always,
is Liam Landry. Yeah.
Yes, the Liam to his Landry. None of that made sense.
No, I never did. I don't know why you said that.
I don't know why either. Anyways, we're back for the Bare Bones Geeky podcast. It's a very fun podcast that we meet up, and we talk about all the geeky goodness that we can. Last week we talked about Marvel. This week we're going to the other side of the comic universe, and we're talking about the DC universe. Usually we'll have like a specific topic within the DC universe to talk about, but when I realized that we didn't, it was like a couple of days ago, and I was just like, you know what? Here's an interesting way, because I don't know a lot about DC. He knows way more. So I was thinking about doing just our favorite DC properties, and also, more importantly, the ones that we grew up with. The ones that really helped us grow into fans of certain tropes and stuff like that. So, we're going to talk about our favorite DC properties, specifically towards our childhoods. So our favorite childhood DC properties, and I'll let you go first, good sir.
My first one will be a very obvious one. I feel it would be Batman the Animated Series. It was a great animated series. It really kind of changed a lot of things up with the concept of what you think would be good for kids. With the show that chooses to have a very serious tone and serious topics about itself, and not talk down to the younger kids, and not have to have type of juvenile humor or things like that to try to get an appeal. It just came at a very mature tone and really treated the kids like adults, and it really worked out that way, along with just great visuals and great storytelling from the cast, from the whole Rose gallery there, and it's also some of the best performances. It really is, my favorite Batman, my favorite Joker, my favorite Mr. Freeze. It's a lot of my favorite of these characters, and it's to me what I believe is quintessential Batman, and I think what the modern interpretation of Batman should be, and modern interpretations of those characters. It's even helped spawn, a modern character in Harley Quinn, and made her into something. It became the concept of, I think, when people think of my generation, all generation, think of Batman and the characters, we think back to this one. And I think that's something that even Batman movies can't really say. I don't think anyone looks at, an all generation at least, looks at the movies and thinks that is the quintessential Batman, and look for Batman to be that. It's more based around what the animated series Batman was.
I've heard a few video clips. I've seen a few video clips of Mark Hamill's Joker and the man who played Batman, and obviously the audio quality is going to be good, but the voice acting is really good and strong in that show. I'm just upset that I didn't get to see a lot of it. At that time, I was watching more Power Rangers, Ninja Turtles, stuff like that. So, can't watch everything, and I ended up going down that road. But animated wise, Digimon, and a lot more Japanese stuff, which goes into my favorite as a kid, because it was very influenced by Japanese style, it was Teen Titans on Cartoon Network. I thought it had a lot of great humor, but also a lot of deep, dark moments, especially with Tara and the way her and Beast Boy had this unfortunate love story where they truly loved each other, but Tara just went too much to the dark side of her personality and lost her way, basically. Pretty sure they killed her off. I'm not entirely sure, but that was heartbreaking to watch in the moment. And then the opening song, or the opening title sequence, being super Japanese influence, especially getting Japanese artists to sing it.
Yeah, I mean, Yumi.
Such a fun, good song.
Which I think was big enough to help get them their own show on Cartoon Network.
I mean, Yumi?
Yeah.
And then, so, you have, like, all these great animation, voice acting. I mean, look at the voice cast. You have Greg Sipes as Beast Boy, and Tara Strong as Raven. Those two right there are probably some of the biggest voice acting legends. And then the other three are also amazing as well. I think Gray Duwais, I'm probably saying her last name wrong, but the lady who plays Starfire, also really big in that community. The other two are as well. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. That voice acting was so good, and a lot of times voice acting is done like you're by yourself in a booth. It didn't feel that way. It probably was that way, but it didn't feel that way because it just had such good chemistry. It was edited so well together. And also, Raven being my favorite character in that show just had this darkness about her, but using it for good, which is cool. So yeah, that's the show in my childhood that really got me to see DC and take it seriously. Unfortunately, Teen Titans Go screwed that up, but Teen Titans the original is just really, really good. Did you watch that one when you were younger?
Yeah, definitely. I would also add that I feel that it also made the quintessential of those characters as well. Especially when it comes to characters that people weren't familiar with.
Yeah.
In the sense of Beast Boy, Starfire, Raven, Cyborg. Cyborg more often because there was earlier like Super Friends, Justice League type stuff in the 70s he was in and all. But a lot of the other characters are not as mainstream known. They're known in the comic books, of course, but not mainstream wise. And I think that's helped create the concept of what they think of those heroes as of today. I think what the type of characters they are and what they're supposed to be.
That's still to this day, especially when you think about the new show Titans, right? And you see Starfire, and she doesn't look like the cartoon version of Starfire. People get upset about that, or how Robin isn't donning the Robin look. He's looking more like Nightwing instead. Or how Beast Boy's CGI is a bit funny looking. Or he doesn't have the same humor as Beast Boy from the cartoon. It's interesting. It really is interesting that that the fans grabbed onto this so much, and having a recurring villain in Slade or Deathstroke be such a big presence, and how sometimes he could even get into the tower, Titan Tower, and wreak havoc, and the stories that they told that way. It's like, they did a really good job. What was some of your favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series and Teen Titans?
Well, before we go, I wanted to add one more thing about Teen Titans. It also really helped. felt like a real show of teenagers.
Yes.
A lot of times when you have teenager-based shows, it can be over dramatic into a sense where it almost seems like it's written by a teenager because it's over dramatic, but it's not really real. Like, I was a teenager, it definitely wasn't over dramatic. Like, there's drama and stuff because it's teenagers take things, but it's a lot more balanced, and Teen Titans was a lot more balanced. It felt like an actual show. It felt like actual teenagers who would have fun, goof off, and have friends with each other. Friends with each other, but also can have drama and serious moments and relationships.
That reminds me of an episode where I think Starfire goes into Raven's room and it makes her really angry, and they just have they just butt heads for the rest of that episode because of this, because of the privacy issues and stuff. Obviously, Starfire comes from a world where it wasn't that big of a deal, but for Raven, and she is way more of an introvert, that was like breaking all kinds of trust barriers. I thought that was really cool, like you said, how it felt like these were teenagers going through all this crud, when most teenagers probably shouldn't be going through all of this. And then having Slade be a villain to teenagers, and sometimes just when he got the upper hand, it was obviously because this is an adult and he's been around the block a few times and he knows how to push their buttons.
Also, that he used teens to fight him as well in the Hive group.
Jinx was one of them.
Yeah, the Mammoth was always a curiosity, but I figured he's just giant. So yeah, I believe they were still supposed to be teens, but there's Mammoth, of course. Then there's
there's a clay monster.
Clay, yeah. I don't think he was part of that group though.
Okay.
Him and Cinderblock, I don't think were necessarily with that same.
They were heavily featured in the game that Cartoon Network had. I don't know if it's still there, but it might. It was like a Street Fighter style game. Who's the one who got all those gadgets? Gizmo. Okay.
Gizmo.
I didn't want to say Gizmo and be made fun of because of the little Mogwai Gizmo.
No, I'm fairly certain it was Gizmo, but yeah, they had people that could really reflect off of them because they're also teenagers, but it's going as enemies. So that's a good way of handling it too. If we can go into what you're talking about in the show as episodes in there. There's some episodes. There was definitely the Baby Doll episode, which really stuck out to me. Because you really have this interesting villain as a person who was a little person who wanted to be an actress, but I don't know if you've ever seen the episode of it.
This is Batman the Animated Series. I've never seen the actual episode, but I do know what you're talking about because I've seen a lot of coverage and people talking about it.
To go into more detail, she wanted to be an actress. She had a small role. Well, she had a major role on a sitcom, much like in the case of, Gary Coleman in that same effect that of playing a much younger character. And then when that came washed up, she tried to get real jobs as acting, but no one respected her. So it was, it was really strong because it was very realistic kind of villain.
Yeah.
It's, something that obviously clearly happens. That's an obvious disease people will have or condition people would have that would make them look like this, and it's a realistic thing to say that about being rejected. It's not necessarily the same thing in a Clayface or a Killer Croc, where it's far more science fiction type illness that gets them ostracized from society, but it's really grounded in there. And of course the ending is the really gripping part when she is going through a funhouse mirror with a gun and she's just shooting all the mirrors there, and then she finally sees one that elongates her and makes her look like a grown adult, and she sees what she always wanted to be, the thing there, and she's out of bullets and can't fire the gun anymore. And Batman appears behind her, and she just breaks down, drops the gun, and starts crying, and he actually consoles her. So that's a interesting concept with Batman as well. Basically consoling the villain from this. And also, like, in the later episodes when she kind of almost reforms to a degree, it doesn't necessarily work out that way. I like that one. I liked, of course, Mr. Freeze is one of my favorite villains. I like the movie associated with Batman animated series, Sub-Zero, that was heavily featured him, but in the episodes themselves, the first one he was introduced, A Heart of Ice, of course, giving the backstory, his tragic backstory from his revenge, and he was just an interesting character, very cold, very deciding, and very straightforward, and single-minded, I guess you can say. And it was also just an interesting concept to see, put Batman through. It's not just a mindless villain and someone getting revenge and for someone who killed his wife. And in that very essence, Batman is someone getting revenge for people who killed his parents. So it's always a great parallel to pair him against someone trying to get revenge. Because it's almost like what he could have been if some things were different. If he chose to kill instead, wouldn't he be Mr. Freeze in that situation? That's two that really stand out. There's also a lot of other great ones. There's one with the Mad Hatter. I forget the exact name of it, but it was a real test right there because it was such a creepy episode, because it's more or less he's a character that's kind of like a child molester. He abducts young girls that look like Alice from Alice in Wonderland for it. So to take it and try to bring it to a kids show is interesting, and it played very dark, very in still keeping with that concept, and it was just really worked out well.
Yeah, that sounds like a very creepy episode.
Yeah. So there's a lot of great ones, and of course a lot of great ones with the Joker. I love for comedy one, I love the one where he ends up getting like this, I think it was like an inheritance type thing, and he thinks that he's like, now I can go clean and stuff, but then finds out that no, he didn't, and has to revert back. There's a great one where Harley Quinn ends up leaving Arkham Asylum because she's deemed sane. She goes back. She actually bumps into Bruce Wayne in there. She's at a clothing store with Bruce and his girlfriend at the time, and she bought the dress, but they forgot to take the security tags on it. She walks through, and the thing goes off. The alarm goes off, and she starts panicking and saying like, I bought this dress, and like the clerk was trying to say, oh no, I just need to take the thing off, but she panicked and like left and ended up kidnapping Bruce Wayne's girlfriend there, and it goes to this whole thing where she ends up back in Arkham Asylum. But once again, it plays into this whole softer side of Batman, because after he brought her to prison, what he also gave her was a gift, and the gift was the dress she bought, giving that to her. Then they had just a really nice line in there that kind of hits you when you think of the dark character that Batman is. When she's like, "You're a nice guy, Batman. Do you have bad days like this? Nice guys like you shouldn't have bad days."
Yeah.
And she ends up giving him a full-on kiss, really making him out, and in the touches, because they can also, of course, can add comedy into Batman the Animated Series as well as being serious. There's just it goes from the kiss over to Robin standing next to the cell that has poison ivy in it, and they just both stare at each other. They just turn and look at each other like, what the hell's going on here? And then of course there's Mad Love, which is a big part of the comic books and the animated series, which was the breakup between Harley Quinn and the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
The opening scene, it showed the extent of the domestic violence between Joker and Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
Because Harley Quinn had Batman, tied up over a pit of piranhas. I was about to kill him. Fought the Joker, and like they had some great banner beforehand, Harley Quinn and Batman, where they're saying, "Oh, where he's talking about like, Joker doesn't really care about you," and there's a point when like she says about how much she does really care, and Batman just laughs at her, and she's like, that really creeps me out. I never heard you laugh before. And it's like, and it was voice acted really well to be like, it seems like she really is legitimately creeped out by the Batman laughing.
Yeah, that's the.
And they actually get.
And quick point on the voice acting. That's also Tara Strong.
It depends. It actually jumped around a few. It might have been Tara Strong at that point.
Okay.
But they.
Because I know she is like quintessential Harley Quinn now.
Yeah.
And if that makes total sense because she's a great voice actress.
It definitely could have been at the time, but yeah, it was. They had that, and she went in. He basically was telling her how Joker manipulates people, and it's actually interesting because you never really see what Joker did to Harley Quinn to get her like that.
Yeah.
And he was like, "What did he do?" That I remember one. It was one parole officer or something like that told a story about how his father always take him to the ice show, and she stops and says, "Circus." He said it was the circus, and it's still great voice acting there. Then when the Joker comes back, and it's like, what is this? And she says like, "Oh, you remember you wanted to do this to him, but you couldn't find a way to make the piranha smile." And that's always just a great concept in the Joker, is that he wanted to do this but didn't because he couldn't make the piranhas look like they were smiling. So she was like, "I found that if you turn Batman upside down, they look like they're smiling to him." And then he just punches her in the face and says, "If you have to explain the joke, it's not funny." It ends up beating her so bad he actually hits her out the window, and then brings Batman and lifts him down out of the piranha plants, out of the piranha, and instead of just killing him dead. Then he still tries to kill him and they fight, but it was a great setup to that. And going back to the domestic violence idea of going to the Harley Quinn like lying in a pile of garbage after she got hit out of the window, saying, "I'm sorry, it was my fault, it was my fault." So it was a great character go for the growth of Harley Quinn. Of course, especially after that, her teaming up with Poison Ivy and other female villains.
Yeah.
So that was a great episode and a great scene to show off all three of those characters in really their perspective way of what I feel is like their ultimate way they should be handled. So that's a series of great ones right there, and there's a lot more great episodes.
Yeah, I know like everything to do with Terra and Teen Titans for me was really I'm not gonna say hit close to home because I've never experienced anything like that.
Yeah, remember that time your girlfriend betrayed you for the Nemesis?
Yeah, it hurt so bad. It really did. I was 5 at the time, or 10 at the time. I couldn't believe it. But it's something that always resonated with me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
How you fall in love with somebody and you give her all of these chances, and then at the very end it turns out she is totally teaming with your enemy, the one person you believe that she would never be with, you know? And it was compelling stuff for a teenager at the time, or a young kid at the time. And then, what? I'm not sure if they killed her off, but I know there was a time where she was back and they tried to give her another chance for Beast Boy's sake, and then it turns out she's still just not a good person, and just feeling so bad for Beast Boy. Yeah, the comedy was in there. A lot of the times it being physical with the animation style, and sometimes their head would get really hot. Exactly, your way eyes went. Their heads would be really huge, and then their bodies would be tiny, tiny.
Mhm.
Or whenever you see like those anime marks on their heads, but a lot of the times when you got really deep down into it, they had really intense character moments. I wish I could go back and watch a lot more right now, because definitely the stuff with Slade and Raven, how that kind of mirrors it with Tara, and he's saying it's only a matter of time before you turn on them and you are mine, and the point where it almost was that with Starfire.
No, it probably would have been Raven.
Okay, and she fights it, or I don't think it's Slade. I think it's Raven's.
It's Raven's father, the demon.
Yeah, that's what it is, and how that's always been an interesting concept of how you could try to be so good, but there's always that person, a family member or a friend, right there who try to just keep bringing you back to that dark, dark path. And that's what Raven had to go through all this time. And when she does fight it off, when she does defeat it, with the help of her friends, the Teen Titans, it goes to show you that, hey, if you're going through dark, hard times, just go to your friends, because they don't want to see you go through this. They want to help you out of it. Go to them, talk to them, and that's like a good allegory to depression, of how you may be feeling these dark, dark thoughts, these dark moments. Go to your friends. Just, it's hard, it's scary, but go to your friends, because they want to help. They want to be there for you. What are some episodes of Teen Titans that stood out to you?
I like the one where they're fighting a guy who was trying to steal the time machine device, I believe it was, and Starfire ended up going into the future and seeing a broken up Titans, because they started off that episode fighting with each other, and they were like, and she finds out what happened, and it's like, when she left, when she was end up vanishing, it's like that she was kind of the glue that was holding them together and was breaking out. And it was just great, kind of cool to see them in such a dark and depressing manner. I think Beast Boy was like kept up in a cage, like a zoo or circus type thing. Cyborg couldn't really survive outside of the tower, because he had to be hooked up to wires in it, try to keep himself up. And it's real all broken characters, and showing really the importance of friendship and mending relationships. Because I think it started off with her like doing a celebration from her home planet about friendship and stuff, and they like end up destroying the beads that she made them accidentally, and she gets upset with them, and all leads to that. So it was good, like what if scenario, and play the importance of their friendship.
Yeah, that is one major common thread throughout the entire series, is friendship. I know later on they end up getting a second tower, and you meet new characters. I think one of those characters turns out to be evil as well.
Yeah, it was Titan West.
In Titan West.
It was Speedy, Honeybee, I think her name is, some with B, and the plus and minus ones, I forget what they were.
Yeah.
But I think there was a similar problem there. I think there was an episode I liked that they had don't know what they ever explained them, but I guess almost like Japanese spirit things.
Mm-hmm.
The brothers of lightning and thunder.
Yeah, I
Remember that
remember
episode?
that.
And it's like you're basically tricked to become villains by Slade because they were
Mm-hmm.
like kind of led astray. I thought that was an interesting concept for a villain.
Being tricked into it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's always best when you can put your characters up against villains that either make the characters think about themselves or put them in interesting situations to see how they basically work around it.
Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty talking about their main antagonists. I really loved Jinx. I thought she was a fun villain for them to work off of,
Mhm.
especially how her power always like she's able to cause them to trip and fall and just
Yeah,
be
'cause-
klutzes.
Yeah, because their power is basically to create real bad luck and
Mhm.
everything. And that's also kind of interesting backstory because you have someone who's probably been pushed aside by society because she just ends up creating bad luck, even though that's not necessarily her intention is to do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a tragic backstory when you think about it. You don't really have to go in depth with it. You can just understand from her backstory to that.
And I'm pretty sure she was the one they tried to get into the Teen Titans.
Yeah,
Where
'cause
Gizmo
Cyborg
and
was-
Mammoth were all like, what the heck? No, get out of there.
Yeah, because Cyborg was basically getting a relationship with her,
Mm-hmm.
and it really goes back to her, that obvious backstory. And it's like
Mhm.
she doesn't really want to be bad, unlike Mammoth and Gizmo, who seem like they want to just mess up things. Another great one was
Pretty sure she ends up turning away from Cyborg at
Yeah.
the end of all that, which is again heartbreaking for the like Beast Boy and Cyborg. They fall in love with these women who don't want to be bad, but ultimately choose to be because they feel like that's the only choice they have given to the only real choice. That's really like watching this as a kid or a teenager. That's some deep stuff. Or be careful who you put all of your love and trust into because there's sometimes their issues you can't overcome them, and that's deep.
yeah.
What were you saying?
One of my favorite characters in Teen Titans was Cyborg.
Mhm.
I think he was the one that stood out to me most, especially looking back at a lot of his episodes.
Mhm.
I love the ones where there were ones where he had to kind of come up to the point that he has a physical limit because he is robotic and wanted to try to get past that, but ended up finding that his human his human spirit and heart is what allows him to get past those limits. I love the one where he went undercover into the hive and Brother Blood, who was kind of the guy teaching the hive in there, found him out immediately and really tempted him by saying, "I can turn you back human," and it really puts him through this interesting thing because that's his whole tragic backstory. It's kind of like, what if Batman went up against a villain and that villain told him, "I can bring your parents back. I can go back in that time and make it that your parents never died and none of this happens." And seeing what Batman would do. And that's asking a lot from a superhero. It's asking a lot for Cyborg to say, "No, I'm going to keep my robotic self, not have it be reversed or anything, just so that I can save the day and do good." And that's like
fighting with that's again another good allegory to what temptation can be, where it's like you're promised all of this good, but ultimately it's gonna come at a cost. And this over here, it seems really bad, but at the end of the day, that's what's gonna keep you not only who you are, but also keep you the best version of you. So, and yeah,
yeah.
but when you really look at all of these shows, you really see the depth of storytelling and just how far they were willing to go with the darkness out of respect for the kids. Where they're like, no, the kids can see this, the kids should see this, because when it does come up into their life, at least they have something when they were a kid to be like, okay, yeah, I get it, I see it. And this would have been a perfect show to watch with your family, where they can actually explain to the kids like all the serious stuff. So, like, I'm glad we found this out when we were younger, because it really showed us, without showing us, the darkness of what this world can be.
It also makes me kind of think of, it's not technically related to those two shows, but it's still Batman related. It was a great episode of from Batman Brave and the Bold, which was more of a comedy-based Batman, kind of inspired from the Silver Age of comics, but had a great episode where, the Spectre, I can't remember the other guy's name, but there's two guys, one's the Spectre and the other one is known as the Spirit of Vengeance, the other is known as Spirit of Justice.
Okay.
But they're basically very powerful beings that can shape reality. And they were fighting over Batman about fighting for vengeance with justice. And they got to the point where they literally handed Batman the guy who killed his parents, and were over his shoulders one of them trying to say, kill him, take him out, and the other saying, no, that's not what you should do. So it's like, that's once again, you're
like
putting
angel and demon situation.
Yeah, you're putting Batman in a situation where you're trying to ask him to fight, and it's like the person that ruined his life for him, the guy who killed his parents, and you have to go with the idea that he eventually does do the right thing, and shows the power of the character.
Yeah, and it's not it's not DC related, it's Marvel related, talking about first Spider-Man, where you see the guy who shot Uncle Ben, and after he dies, and Spider-Man goes on to a tear of vengeance immediately, and he goes and he finds him, and he's getting ready to, he wants to push him out the window, but the cop cars stop him. Ultimately, the guy trips and falls out himself, but just having that moment of, I can push you out I can snap your neck right here, I can kill you right here because of the heartache I'm feeling. Should I or should I not? It's such and because he actually dealt with that with vengeance and justice. And it's interesting that Batman has gone through very similar things as well.
Yeah.
Let's talk about
also one of my favorite lines that came from Young Justice. It was Batman explaining. They were going over the character. They were going over which Young Justice members should be brought up to the Justice League full time, and they went over Robin, and there was a back and forth between Wonder Woman and Batman about, like, he was saying, like, you know, she was saying, like, you took him and you made him into a vigilante hero and like brought him along with him to Night Justice, and he was like, he had to be there to give out justice for his parents, and it's like, why? And she was like, why? So he can be like you? And he says, no, that he can not, so he won't be like me. Because that's always the thing too, is that it's the hurt, it's the feeling that he could never have done anything, that he always has to live with. So that's always a great line that I think of.
Because it gives Batman so much more dynamics than just a dude in a bat suit, which is really, really cool, and I feel like a lot of newer age Batman stuff fails to capture, which is why a lot of times there's this weird divide. Like the recent Batman stuff with Ben Affleck and Christian Bale, we didn't really get that. And yeah, Batman Begins and Dark Knight were really good, but what do we really, really remember from that? Christian Bale's over the top Batman voice, and and the villains, especially Joker for Dark Knight, and then who's the other one again?
Bane.
Not Scarecrow.
Oh,
That one's Dark Knight Rises. Scarecrow.
Ra's al Ghul.
And say his name one more time.
Ra's al Ghul.
Ra's al Ghul.
A lot of times it's pronounced Raj al Ghul, but it's Ra's
Al Ghul. So Ra's al Ghul and Scarecrow in the first one, way more memorable than actually Batman, which is a shame because it's his movie.
Mhm.
And the dueling personalities of the Joker and Batman and the detective stuff, we are complete. The Dark Knight is the Joker's movie. He's the most captivating, he is the most engaging, and he's what everyone remembers. No one really remembers what happens with Batman in that movie, which is weird considering it's his movie.
Yeah. It is always important to remember the concept that you shouldn't want to be Batman because and this is the concept of the modern Batman interpretation that comes from things like the animated series and especially stuff from like Frank Miller in the 80s with like the Dark Knight Returns and all. The concept that like Batman is kind of a tragic story as a person that's suffering from PTSD, survivor's guilt, and many things like that leads him down this dark path, and he's not really healthy, and he almost understands he's not healthy, but he still does it anyway. And one of the things I didn't like about the Dark Knight trilogy is I didn't like that it gave this happy ending to Batman. This whole thing of fake your death, end up in some Italian village, and it's like that's not Batman, That's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be, like Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller, still old, still trying to fight crime. Batman Beyond, still he pushed away everyone around him, still trying to do what he can to fight crime. That's all consuming for him. It's supposed to be a tragic story. It's almost a what not to have done. Like you shouldn't want to be Batman after understanding what Batman is.
And if basically when you really break down to a lot of the DC stuff, a lot of it stems from, at the end of the day, you don't want to be these people, especially when you see exactly what they're going through. I mean, yeah, a lot of people are like, I want to be Batman when I grow up. That's cool. That's the kid's admiration. But when you are older, you have to look at it through a different set of glasses and be like, oh wow, he's going through so much. And I think that's what really attracts us to the geeky side of DC stuff, is that they can tell these Shakespearean-esque stories in a lighter tone, but still keep that darkness right there.
I also liked how they were in Batman animated series. They were always okay for dropping knowledge into there, from stuff like first time I ever heard of anything from the Odyssey was from there. Basically, they had an escaped convict from Arkham Asylum. Well, it may have been the other prison, but the escaped convict there, and Commissioner Gordon was telling Batman, "Wouldn't worry too much. It's just a no one." And he says to him, in the Odyssey when Odysseus and his men were captured by the Cyclops, he told the Cyclops that his name was No One, so that when he gouged the Cyclops' eyes out, and his friends asked, "Who did this to you?" all he would respond was, "No one." And there was an episode with the Riddler leaving this gigantic computer in the police station, and they had to go into it via virtual reality and answer a lot of riddles with it. And like, it didn't hold back. It like was riddles about Greek mythology and concepts, and it was really kind of almost educational. I also like one episode where this guy lost his memory and ended up believing he was Zeus and created a giant lightning bolt weapon. Has one of the best lines in Batman, where he's almost knocked off. He believes Batman is Hades, his brother, but like gets knocked off the building, but catches with the grappling hook, pulling himself out while lightning's happening in the background, the storm's happening, and like the henchmen are like, "What are you?" And it's like, "I am the night. I am vengeance. I am the night. I am Batman." And that scene of him just like climbing up the rope while lightning going around him, that happens. And I even liked going with the whole educational thing. I liked how when the guy who believed he was Zeus was being brought through the Arkham Asylum, he was like going and naming like all the villains as if they were gods. He like Two-Face. I can't remember all the names, but he was like Two-Face. He talked about him being like the two-faced god, who actually has like two sides of his face, which I think a lot of the whole drama mass may be connection to. But he was the god of good and bad luck, or good and bad fate. Was he like Poison Ivy? It was oh no, what was the name? It was the goddess of nature. And then I think it was like Joker was someone.
Is that one Hera?
No, it was I can't remember. I can't remember a lot of these names. Was like, and Joker was the trickster god and stuff like that. So, it was Greek mythology though.
Okay, yeah.
First, but it's like, but he was like naming all these, and it's like, yeah, here's kind of a Greek mythology connection to it, and it's kind of interesting talking. It's like we wouldn't know Greek mythology as a kid, but you kind of being opened up to it because we're not being talked down to. They're expecting to give us something, and we'll just go with it.
And when you're older, when you're like a little bit older, or if you're watching that as an older kid or a young teenager, that gives you that inspiration to go to the library and look this stuff up. I remember a lot of the times going to the library and wanting to read a book was because of some of the stories I've heard of as a kid. Like, I've always been around Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and I've always wanted to read it, so I did. Let's quickly, since we only have a few more minutes left, let's quickly talk about two properties, DC, that we currently like today, and how it represents of what we liked about DC in the past. Would you like to start?
I'll let you start it off.
Alright, so
the last
one would have to be Watchmen for me. I am not a fan of what Rorschach is looking like in HBO at all, but what he looked like in the movie was amazing. With the faceless mask and the Rorschach imagery continually moving was amazing.
I would at least go on to say that the concept is more accurate in HBO, I would assume, because it is just this kind of crazy guy who doesn't really have a lot of funding, so it's never necessarily explained. It doesn't have to be explained in the movie about how he can get something like this. It looks cooler though, so it's kind of like
amazing.
It's kind of like what you want to get the concept of like something more practical for the story, or just
Yeah,
something that looks better to look better.
they're probably playing it down to have a more realistic look to it, where the movie is way more stylized.
Yeah.
But but the movie for The Watchmen had a lot of interesting dynamics to it when it comes to government, kill a few to save the many, and war, and what a hero is, the rejection of a hero,
Yeah, it's of course.
a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, it's of course one of the central concepts that changed what we thought of when it came to comic books. When it came out, we were, of course weren't born there, but so many people tried to emulate that. It really created the concept of the '90s. People tried to make it ultra violent, but they weren't really getting the other points. And when they tried to do that with, say, the Civil War storyline, or a lot of the other some storylines in DC, they still kind of missed the point.
Yeah.
It was very difficult to really nail down because they didn't want to go through the effort, because they had to have villains who were bad, and that was the interesting concept there. You had to have not villains. You had to have heroes that were bad. That should be more appropriate. But you had to have a hero that was willing to rape another hero, and would probably be raping other women, and probably be getting away with it too because of his hero status. You had to have heroes go and shoot protesters with a flamethrower. You know, that's not something that you'd ever see Captain America or Iron Man doing,
No,
or
not at
Batman
all.
or Superman, and that's kind of like the thing that is the reason why they will never work. They really showed a good reason to say, hey, maybe superheroes aren't actually necessary, because that was kind of on the concept of saying, like,
I mean, just look at Dr. Manhattan in the movie, where he's going around, and all he's doing, because he has no value for human life, he's just going and exploding all of the Vietnamese people in the war.
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, you didn't have to do that. You could have done it in a different way. And
Well,
it's
you-
like, it doesn't matter to me.
yeah, even when he's taking out mafia in a bar, it's like, you're invulnerable. You could just destroy their guns and make them surrender. It's taking unnecessary life, and even the concept that he's really is this unfeeling thing. And it's like, well, what if he ever did decide to just say humans are bad and the world would be a better place without him? It's completely practical to assume that he could go on and kill people.
Yeah, and it's also
love the
practical that the humans are like rejecting him now because of how much of a threat he is, which makes way more sense than the rejection of Superman in the last couple of Superman movies.
Yeah, it's also going with the concept of saying, like, I love that. I love the scene in there, the movie, and it's really great because it really is better compared to, say, on a comic book, because you can really tell from inflections when they had the scenes that were not back to back, but in like the same montage, where it's like that, late night talk show host is like, there is a Superman and his name is Dr. Manhattan, and go to the end and it's like, now we know there is a God and his name is Dr. Manhattan. He says it a lot slower and a lot more afraid. He doesn't seem comfortable with Dr. Manhattan. He understands his power and understands he could be next at any second. And it's not going, it's like, that's one of the things too, is like, all these superheroes, it's like, oh, that people reject them. It's like, no, we kind of see the superheroes and we know that they're good people deep down. And it's like, even once we know Dr. Manhattan, we don't know that he's good deep down. He's not a moral person. He's more of a logical person.
So, and then going back in the last DC movie with Superman, you have all these people going, "Oh, what happens if he wanted to do this out of nowhere and he could?" And the people rejecting him. All he's shown is protection to you.
Yeah.
And that speaks way more than, oh, he might snap. Yeah, but he's showing that that's not gonna happen. Where Dr. Manhattan shows he will snap whenever he bloody well pleases, because he just doesn't care.
Yeah.
Like, he went and force ghosted himself onto a woman because he just didn't have the time to actually be with her.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's willing to do that just because he just doesn't want to just because he doesn't want to get intimate, what else will he do to people he doesn't love? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he also had the part where his first wife was saying, "You're just leaving me because he got old," and he's like, "I thought about it, and it was true."
Mm-hmm.
She was getting old, and he's just a very logical guy. It's like dealing with the psychotic AIs in movies like 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it allowed it to be set up. And there's so many ways you can say why it works for Watchmen and doesn't work for other ways. Another big part is that they never showed that they were needed. Like, that's one of the concepts of superheroes, is that they're cosmic justice. That's one of the root causes of superheroes, is that there are people out there, especially in 20s, 30s, Prohibition era, that felt like criminals got away with anything. Like, we all know major criminals,
like Al Capone.
Al Capone, all these major bosses, and it was like well known that those guys were criminals. Nowadays, it's not like that. Like, we couldn't say who's the mob boss in New Orleans or New York or something like that, because it's not just out there as much, because it was far more blatant back then because of the limitations before, say, the RICO Act and stuff like that. So it was almost wish fulfillment, the idea to have someone in a costume go up and beat up these people for you. That they didn't have to be bounded by justice, and they weren't corrupt like the justice system was.
Exactly.
But then when you get to the concept later on where you said justice system is better, there's less crime, that's when the point where you can really go and say, are they necessary? And Watchmen, were they necessary?
Exactly.
Because they didn't have supervillains. They didn't have these great cosmic threats that other superheroes had. They were just killing guys with guns, guys with knives. It wasn't needed to. They could have police there, and that's when they basically said, these guys aren't regulated, they're not watched over, and they're not even necessary. And that's kind of one of the other big distinctions. Like, you can't have people be like, do we need the Avengers to be out there? And it's like, well, yeah, we got 6 cosmic threats at us, every year. We kind of had to be out there on the front lines.
Yep.
Because what are you gonna do when Thanos arrives, Mr. Military Man? Nuke him? No, that's not the option for everything. Because I still point to that fact, the first Avengers, the military tried to nuke New York City and then complained about the Avengers breaking a few buildings. It's like, when you put that proportion, it will never have that capacity. If you have, say, the Hulk pick up the Empire State Building to drop it onto a mugger, that's the type of thing where you can say, no, he needs to be held back. He needs to be regulated.
Yeah.
He needs to be regulated. And that's one of the things that Watchmen did. It was far more efficient with that, because that's what it was meant to do. Like Batman, Superman, Avengers, Justice League, that's not what they were meant to do. This was designed for that specific purpose, to make people think about the concept of superheroes.
Yeah, and that's why within Watchmen, that type of story works so well, like you were saying. And then my other one would have to be Shazam. I thought it was a great modernized what if a young teenager got superpowers story. I thought Zachary Levi played the role of Shazam perfectly when he was superhero form. I thought all the kids were really good. But the only thing I wish was different is that they spent more time with the Seven Deadly Sins. I thought having them be the main antagonist was underwhelming. I thought they were great during watching it. I thought all of it was good. Coming out a few days or a couple weeks later, I wanted more from them. Having this talk about, Envy's always the one. First off, they all look exactly the same, being dark and stuff. They didn't have any, which is unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have their own special color or their own special look.
Yeah.
But also, they didn't have a chance. They're like, I'm gonna let Greed have you. They didn't really. They expected people to, or at least the adults, to already know the Seven Deadly Sins. But within that world, we don't. And that was a shame. It's always Envy being held behind. Well, how did we know? We didn't know that. It could have been Lust always being held behind. And the rest are having the time of their lives. But he says that, and we have to take it at face value. Like, yep, that's the thing, which is helped. That wasn't even set up, unfortunately. And there was a few things that just, storyline wise, for the villains, just it didn't hit the beats it could have, which I was super upset about. I feel like if they would have had that main villain there, take that, and then he's just gone until the next movie, and then another villain comes up, that would have been a risky move, but I think it would have been a lot better, because it's a origin story for Shazam, and we need an origin story for the Seven Deadly Sins to really get invested in them, and I really wanted to, but at the end of the day, I just couldn't, because they didn't have a distinct personality, and they didn't have
distinct look.
A distinct look. And they didn't do anything. They killed the dude's family, and they stirred a ruckus at an amusement fair, or a state fair. Big deal. If they would have opened with that kid, or him just getting whisked away and then immediately taking it, cool. But they didn't. We didn't get enough of the villains, and those villains, the seven. There's an entire anime series about the Seven Deadly Sins in a different way, and each one has its own. Each character has their own personality. Each character has their own traits. It gets you invested. When you hear these are the Seven Deadly Sins, you want to be invested. Whether they're heroes or villains, you want to be invested and see that personality. We didn't get that. However, on the positive, we got a fun story for our hero, which that's what it was supposed to be, because it's a new hero. Not many people know Shazam. You have to be able to bring him into the forefront. I just wish it wasn't the Seven Deadly Sins right off the gate. Mm-hmm. But it was a fun movie, funny movie, and it was great. That's just the one thing I wanted to get off my chest.
Can't wait for the next movie where it's him versus ISIS, so we can have the Shazam ISIS Power Hour.
Oh my gosh!
Would you get the reference? Because that's an old one.
Is that a real thing?
ISIS was another DC character.
Okay,
it was another
because
DC.
My mind went straight to
I'm making a joke about how the name is saying, but it's based off of like an ancient Egyptian goddess.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know her now.
But they did have a show where I don't think they were together. I think it was like back to back. That's why it was a Sam ISIS Power Hour. Like back in the 60s, it was live action.
Okay.
But it's just so obvious the joke is there to make itself.
Mm-hmm. It is. Especially nowadays.
Yeah.
But yeah, any couple more that you can think of before we head off?
I don't know. Of course, there's a lot of great DC animated movies. It's really
Plug one of those that you love so much.
yeah. You have Under the Red Hood. It's a really great one. They of course have from the same people who made Batman the animated series, Mask of the Phantasm. It's really one of the best Batman creations out there, from live action or animated. Yeah, there's
A fun fact about that movie is that I'm pretty sure Ebert,
it's Siskel and Ebert.
Siskel and Ebert, they actually reviewed it years later, and they're like, "We're upset we missed this," which is cool.
went by the fact that they overlooked it when it first came out. But it happened a lot. A lot of critics overlooked animated movies that weren't Disney. And after it went on VHS, people came to him and said, you should really check it out. It's a really great movie. So they apologized first off, and they said, we're going to dedicate our entire show to just talk about Batman Mask of the Phantasm.
And they loved it.
Yeah, it was great. It's known as, many people will refer to it as the best movie from live action or animated of Batman. So it's hard not to get enough of it. Of course, Sub-Zero, like I said, made me a big fan of Mr. Freeze, the character. One I always feel gets a bad rep when it goes to things. Kind of like how Aquaman is always looked at as a joke because of the Silver Age. And
Yeah.
it's kind of looked at that for Mr. Freeze. Like, everyone thinks that he's doing ice puns, like Arnold Schwarzenegger's Freeze.
Yeah.
And there, and it's like, no, he's more better character than that.
That's just Joel Schumacher not knowing what he had, or not knowing.
Yeah,
what
trying to
to
go
do
for
with
more
any
of a
of the
Silver
characters.
Age Batman, where it was just really out of date for the time. And any other great ones, there's some really good ones with the Justice League Doom, and Justice League War, which is like a continuing series for it. Flashpoint Paradox was
Which is an interesting form of a what if, where what if Batman was the father instead of the son?
and Joker being the mother instead of another character, and was what ifs with Superman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman. It's a lot of what if scenarios there. But yeah, there's a lot of good ones like that. Then of course, I know I can at least understand that Batman Hush should be another good one that's coming out this year, if not already out. I've seen
What
it.
was Ninja Batman like? Have you seen that one yet?
I haven't seen it yet, but from what I
should watch
understand,
that
it's a
and
very
review it.
crazy one.
We should watch that one and review it.
But what other ones? Batman vs. Robin, Son of Batman. That's a great one when it comes with Damian Wayne. Batman vs. Robin is like the sequel to that, of them fighting each other. But yeah, there's a lot of really good ones, really solid ones. And there's also good ones with, say, Superman as well. I hear the Wonder Woman one's really good. A lot of people say that's actually better than the Wonder Woman live action movie takes a lot from it. But that they think that the animated one was better. So
that's impressive. That's impressive. Dude, a lot of people had a problem with the third act of that movie.
Yeah.
The Wonder Woman movie.
Yeah. They had with Superman versus the Elite, I think it was.
Okay.
It was basically a storyline of talking about the concept of ultra-violent heroes compared to the classic non-violent heroes. It's basically a story of of Superman, and then there's this group of the Elite, and they're like, they go around and they kill villains, and people start really picking up and liking them, and thinking that Superman's too old school. And there's even a whole point where a guy who's like a friend of Superman, he's not a friend enough to know who Clark Kent is and his secret identity, but there he actually gets killed by a supervillain that Superman could have stopped if he killed people, but because he didn't kill people, he came back and ended up killing his father and in front of the son, and the son is really upset with Superman because of that, and people just think that Superman's old school, and they go for these new guys. So what Superman does is he's like, fine, I'll play by your rules, and that's when he goes and it's like, I'm not gonna hold back, and he shows off like his true power, and he just destroys this entire group of superheroes, of meta humans, without any problem whatsoever. Just defeats them. There's one guy, Manchester Black, who has psychic abilities. What he does is literally uses laser vision to shoot through his eyes to sever the part of his brain that was actually using the psychic powers.
Wow.
So he literally made it so he's not psychic anymore. And he makes it look like he just killed every single one of these guys. And like it goes to cut to the people around and they're terrified of this Superman. Because and then he goes and says, but I didn't actually kill him. And he actually shows that he saved all of them. He just defeated them and made it look like he was killing them, in order to show people, that's not what you want. So it's this big storyline for the concept of classic superheroes versus the 90s, dog kill out, anti-hero type concepts. Really plays with that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then to wrap up, to talk about it, like these shows in our childhood and even today they're playing with very dark elements, but they're allowing it to be done and the stories to be told in such a way where kids can watch and understand, and when they're older they can really see just exactly the depth of what they're being told, as well as the educational purposes and other things like that. Definitely wants me to go check out way more DC stuff, because I'm a huge Marvel guy. I love Marvel, but being one over the other, especially nowadays, is stupid. It really is, because each and every type of way, each and every type of industry has its own golden. It's like when we talk about our other channel, Smart Wrestling Alliance, how people are angry with New Japan Pro Wrestling because they don't meet this standard, but WWE is also not meeting that standard. But they have to like WWE over this other guys because that's just how it is. No, you can like them both for different reasons. All right. Anything left to add for you, sir?
One other quick one.
Yes.
There was Justice League New Frontier, which was based off a comic book series. It's a really cool kind of retro style, because it's based off the looks of the 1950s and all. And they also have some of the concepts from there. A great one was Robin was introduced because they were afraid that Batman was too scary for kids. So there's actually a scene in there where Superman's like, when do you get the new kid and change your look? And it's like, I designed this to scare criminals, not children. But it's like the formation of the Justice League in this new kind of 50s alternate reality.
That's cool.
Yeah, but that's it.
Yeah,
that's another great one that
definitely
I've
check
seen.
that one out.
And there's other great ones that I still haven't seen yet, but you can definitely look at tons of top 10 lists that go through.
The material is out there if you look for it.
Yeah.
And if you want to look for it, do it.
I still definitely need to see The Dark Knight Returns, the part 1 and 2. Because that's a classic story.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, yeah. So I guess we can.
And then alright, that's our show for this week. Next week it's Mother's Day, so we will be back here and we will be talking about. Well, next week is going to be a special Mother's Day episode, all about mothers, and we'll let you know what that means next week. But that's basically what it is. Next week is a special Mother's Day episode all about mothers, and comment below and let us know what you think about DC, what your favorite DC properties, what you watched and what you grew up with as a kid, and just let us know all about that, because we want to know as well, and helps get a conversation going and helps us with more material down the line. Also, if you like what we do, please give us those sexy, sexy likes.
And the unsexy ones.
And then, don't forget to share to all of your friends.
And enemies.
Yes. So if you're Batman, not only send it to Robin, send it to the Joker as well. If you really like what we do, if you're doing all of that, then subscribe to the Smarky. No, don't do that. I screwed this all up. Then subscribe to our channel, Skeleton Productions, so that way you are part of the Skeleton Army. And then ring the notification bell because
You want to get notified for when we go live for our Geeky Bare Bones podcast. And also for when we put any type of videos on the channel or information, polls, notices for future events and things like that. So if you ring that bell, you can get notified because YouTube probably won't notify you unless you do that.
yeah, so you want to know when we're doing our stuff, guys. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter at IsaJ_STP.
Follow me on Twitter at Liam_SWA.
And yeah, that's basically the show. And until next time, it will be awesome.
Bye. Bye.
We thank you so much.